Hi, this is Steve Castle with Castle Real Estate Group, and welcome to our first episode of Lean Into Local Arizona. Today, we're excited to interview Thomas Barr, Executive Director of Local First Arizona, and talk about ways that here in the community we can support local businesses during the current environment. Come on, let's go inside. I'm sitting here with Thomas Barr, the Executive Director for Local First Arizona. And I wanted to make sure and have Thomas on this as our first guest because Local First is an organization I've been involved with for a long time, something I feel very passionately about, and something I think is really important during the current environment that we're in. So Thomas, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So why don't you tell me a little bit about Local First, when it started, and kind of what it evolved into, and where it is today.
Yeah, so Local First Arizona was started back in 2003 by Kimber Lanning, who a lot of people know in town as not only the founder of Local First, but a small business owner too. So if you've been to Central Phoenix and have visited Stinkweeds, the record store before, that's Kimber's store. She started that, I believe, back in 1987. Nice. And then we are sitting in the Worth House, which is next door to Modified Arts, which is Kimber's art gallery. That used to be a music venue that she opened up back in 1999. Matter of fact, the Modified Arts was the first place that I ever saw a concert back in 6th grade.
Nice. Awesome.
So back then, the neighborhood we're in is known as Roosevelt Row. It was a much different place back in 1999 than it is now in 2020. And that's kind of the launch of how Local First Arizona got started in a way. So Kimber comes from an entrepreneurial background. Her father was a jazz musician. Her mother owned art galleries. Her brothers are entrepreneurs. And through her record store and her art gallery, she started to see a lot of young people who grew up in Arizona leaving Arizona after school. And they would come back over the holidays and say, Kimber, when are you going to give up on Arizona, give up on Phoenix and move to somewhere else, Austin, Portland, Chicago, whatever it is. And she started to get a little ticked off because she was like, what's so wrong with this place, right? And so she started to really realize there was a disconnection to place. People were going to happy hour at Applebee's, shopping at the malls on the weekend, and weren't doing anything that made them feel connected to Arizona. So she thought of a place that she knew people were proud of being from, and started to ask those people that were from there why they're so proud of that place being Chicago. If you talk to anybody, usually everyone knows somebody from Chicago because people from Chicago tell everyone they're from Chicago because they're proud of that place, right? So Kimber did her own little survey, and everybody from Chicago told her, you know what? It's the walkable streets, it's the restaurants, it's the neighborhoods. I walk into a barber shop, and it's the same barber that's been cutting my hair for 20 years. And she realized, you know what? People feel connected to that place because they're not connected to locally owned businesses. And so she thought, why don't we feel that way about Arizona? Why do we have a lower than average voter turnout, lower than average volunteer rate in Arizona? A lot of it is tied to us not feeling or being connected to local businesses. So being a small business owner and knowing other small business owners herself, they picked up the yellow pages at the time and started calling all their friends and other businesses that were family owned, independently operated, locally owned, and they started growing a local business coalition. In about 5 years, they grew it to about 800 businesses. Fast forward to today, we represent over 3,000 locally owned businesses across the state, and we're the largest local business coalition in North America. So we have about 30 staff, and we provide resources, education, a voice, and programming that is all centered around building a better and stronger Arizona through the lens of empowering local ownership. So all of our programming is focused on not only providing direct resources to businesses, but helping address some of the barriers that exist to certain communities that may not have all the tools and resources to start a business or eat local food. So we do a lot of different work, but most people know us for our Buy Local movement that's been going on for 17 years now.
Nice.
Yeah.
So tell me why that's so important right now in the current environment.
Yeah, well, it's always important. It's even more important now that we're dealing with the most unprecedented economic crisis that I've ever seen, that most people have ever seen. And we're really seeing the weaknesses of how the economy is infrastructured right now being exposed. We are so reliant on economic development teams for the past 30 years being focused on big business, right? That we've left behind a lot of the infrastructure that's needed for local businesses and small businesses to thrive and to be successful and to have the resources that they need. And so breaking in the COVID pandemic, you're seeing a lot of businesses with, they don't have 6 to 12 months of reserves. They have maybe 3 weeks or 3 months, and shutting down for any period of time is devastating for them. We're also in a really unique position in Arizona where in March and April is when most restaurants and retail locations in our urban areas like Greater Phoenix see a surge in revenue that they rely on to get through the slower months of the summer.
Right.
So because COVID hit right kind of in the beginning of March, those revenues that were supposed to come in at that time, those businesses didn't see. And now we're in the summer. So there's a lot of support needed for businesses. You're seeing a lot of people in the community stand up and order to go from local restaurants, go the extra mile, drive the extra mile literally to go support a local business and pick up curbside. And what we try to do is remind people that it's, restaurants super important, right? We have to support those homegrown businesses, but it's also more than restaurants, and it's more than retail. It's home services, businesses that we might hire to come into our homes. Maybe we feel uncomfortable doing that right now. So could we, order a service that maybe we use in a few months when it's safer to have somebody coming into your home? Maybe there's a membership that you might have to a local gym or to a local nonprofit art organization that you want to keep so that they can keep revenue going. Right. So there's a lot of things we're encouraging people to do because we know that more money stays in our state and recirculates when you spend it at a local business. Actually, every $100 you spend at a local business, $45 stays in Arizona. You spend the same $100 at a chain, and only $13 stays here.
Wow.
So it's always important to do it. It's even more important now.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So tell me specifically kind of some of the services that you guys are offering right now to help businesses either, for lack of a better word, pivot, adjust, whatever you want to say, as far as dealing with the circumstance we're in and figuring out how to come out of it on the other side, hopefully stronger.
Yeah. So obviously small businesses are all different types and sizes, but a lot of them are dealing with similar things. And the first is access to capital and finances. However, none of them have dealt with a COVID pandemic before.
Right.
So, you hear about Paycheck Protection Program loans and emergency disaster loans from the SBA and maybe a grant from a city or something like that. And a lot of these businesses are applying for these things for the very first time, and everyone's applying for it. Right. So there's long wait lines, or if you have a relationship with a big bank, you're really just a number right now, waiting to hear back. And there's not a branch you can go into and just talk to somebody if you're with one of those big banks. Or maybe you call up the SBA and you sit on hold for hours and hours. And it's not that the SBA is doing something poorly. It's just that's the infrastructure that we have. So what Local First did was really step in and act as a guider for businesses who weren't getting questions answered, couldn't talk to anybody, and just honestly needed support to get their questions answered for what they were trying to do. So we actually worked with the Arizona Association of Certified Public Accountants, CPAs, and we had about a dozen volunteers tell us that they were available to help any businesses that had questions about the SBA loans.
Nice.
So rather than, as you can imagine, being a small business, you're stressed out, you don't know what's coming next, calling the SBA, calling whoever and not getting an answer, you call Local First, we answer, and then we make an introduction to an actual person who's a professional accountant who can answer your questions and guide you through the process. So we helped over 400 businesses apply for and get funded through the emergency injury disaster loan. We helped over 300 businesses get connected to local banks so that they could get access to the Paycheck Protection Program funding. And we consulted, so we provided direct assessments and consulting services to over 500 businesses.
Wow.
So what we were doing is we'd jump in a call, we'd assess their situation, we'd connect them to legal support, business coaches, marketing and PR support if they were in a crisis communication situation. We'd connect them to companies that were selling PPE equipment so that they could source face masks and hand sanitizer and plexiglass. So it was really about being conscientious of what the business needed at all times and delivering that information to them in a timely fashion. Because, they're getting information from the media, they're getting information from Facebook, and they needed a trusted resource. So that's what we really stepped in to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I know before we started this, you had kind of mentioned some work you were doing with the cities and getting connected up with some businesses that way. So can you tell me a little bit more about what that looks like for you guys and how you're helping some local businesses that way?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Local First has been around for 17 years, and we have had to look at how we operate and how we pivot ourselves. We're talking to businesses every day about how they are structured, the markets they're operating in, the products and services they offer, and we've had to do that too. We've put on fun events and great events for the community, like our Fall Festival that traditionally in the fall brings out 30,000 people. We know that's not happening this year. We put on Devour Culinary Classic every spring, which is a 2-day culinary festival with thousands of people and chefs and restaurants. That might not look like it has before. And that's just the reality that I think all organizations and businesses need to face. So what we've been doing is really positioning ourselves to better be able to provide technical assistance and training to small businesses to pivot themselves. So we're partnering with different cities and different organizations and associations throughout the state to provide that education to businesses. Really what we're trying to do is be the best experts we can be at predicting the future for small businesses. So I'm not thinking about what a business needs next week. I am, right? I'm in real time thinking, what are you gonna need? What's happening right now? But really what I'm thinking is, what does 8 weeks from now look like for you? And what do you need to be doing now so that in 8 weeks you're not panicking, and 8 weeks you have a plan. So that could look like analyzing all of the products you offer and completely wiping the slate clean, and maybe you shrink the number of products you're offering and you only focus on a few. Maybe it's your operations, maybe it's how you're structured, maybe it's how your business is positioned online. Maybe you don't have an online store yet and you need to get one. So we're really helping businesses think creatively, innovatively, and quickly about how they can adapt to what we know is something that's not ending soon. Because in order for small businesses to survive, it's inevitable they've got to have a great digital presence, and they have to continue offering incredible customer service. That's why people go to local businesses, is for experiences and service. And so with everything stacked against them, we know businesses still need those resources and energy to be able to do it. So that's where we're kind of focusing our energy.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So is that, that pivot that you guys are having to make, is that affecting your bottom line? I know we had also kind of talked a little bit about you guys getting a big kind of influx in capital from some of the kind of, I guess you want to say, like larger businesses here in town, and individuals to help support small businesses. So can you talk about a little bit about kind of what that looked like?
Yeah, so a couple things. So first is immediately when the COVID pandemic started, our team really stepped up and took a great leadership role in how we were planning for the future. So I would say in the middle of March, when we transitioned our team to work from home, our leadership team actually set up nightly calls for an hour every night for about 2 weeks, so that we could assess, develop plans, and talk through different scenarios that we knew we were going to come up against, and we were well positioned to do it, make sure we were well positioned to do it. So the first thing we did is we said, you know what, all of this is happening to small businesses, and there's a lot of businesses we know that aren't going to be able to renew their membership right now. That's just the reality, right? They love Local First, they find value in it, but they're facing, potentially a business closing. Right. So what could we do to help them? because on the other hand, we have a lot of people in the community reaching out saying, what can we do to help?
Right.
So one of the first things we did is we launched a sponsor business program. So people in the community could step up and they could sponsor a small business. And what we would do is we would make sure that that business's membership stayed active. We set up a consultation with them. We made sure they'd get funding through a grant or an SBA loan or the PPP program. And we made sure to give a lot of time and attention to them through the support of the community.
Awesome.
So for that, thinking, from a business perspective, if you're gonna have a drop in revenue from one service or product, how are you gonna replace that revenue? And so that's how we were able to do that and still continue offering all the services we provide to the community. So that was just one example. The other is that we knew that there was gonna be a large number of businesses that are very small that were not gonna be able to wait for government financial assistance to come through. Because we know a lot of businesses that have maybe they're sole proprietors or they have less than 3 employees, and they're looking at putting food on the table every week and every month, not going on that next grand vacation. So what we did is we launched a fund. We call it the Small Business Relief Fund. And to date, we've raised $1.5 million in private funding. We've given out over 650 micro grants to small businesses to help them sustain themselves.
That's amazing.
So these have been grants of up to $2,500, help the business pay their rent, help them feed their family. We've been giving a lot of grants out to businesses with children at home under 18, and they've got nowhere else to go, right? No other options. So these are our barbers, these have been our hairstylists, these have been our caterers, our event companies, and our carpet repair companies, and those businesses that aren't necessarily essential, but are critical for the economy. So we're continuing to build that fund and do that work. And it's been really meaningful, but also really hard to do because we know a lot of these businesses are in tough places.
Yeah, no doubt. No
yeah.
doubt. How do people find out about that? The people applying for the grants, are they all mostly members already, or are you guys doing outreach to make sure that businesses know you're here for them? How do they do that?
So a couple things happened right as the pandemic hit. The first is that we researched into what was going to be, what needed to happen in order for businesses to apply for the emergency disaster loans that get made available by the SBA. And those loans get made available when there's a disaster in any community. So let's say a tornado comes through and the businesses are devastated. There's a fund set up through the SBA that can be released to help businesses in times of crisis. So that's the fund that needed to get tapped into. But as you could imagine, it's a really bureaucratic process to get the funds accessible. So what we did is we found out that in order to get them released, the governor has to formally request them. And in order for him to formally request them, he has to know that small businesses are going to be devastated. So what we did is we reached out to businesses across the state, because we have members in every town and city across Arizona. And we had over 50 letters sent to the governor's office within 24 hours stating the projected loss in revenue they were going to see with the shutdown. Okay. And what that enabled us to do is position ourselves as a trusted resource to his office. And he invited our founder, Kimber, at the press conference to announce that the loans would be made available.
Yes.
So after that, his team actually reached out to us and said, what else you got? And they asked us for some recommendations on what they could be working on to help small businesses through the crisis. So we were able to do a lot of things. We were able to allow bars and restaurants to sell alcohol in to-go containers. We were able to allow food trucks to set up at highway rest stops. We were allowed to have restaurants set up as mini grocery stores and sell toilet paper and hand sanitizer and produce and vegetables. And we were able to even get an eviction protection ordinance put through for the state of Arizona. So through doing that, we had a lot of media attention on us.
Yeah.
And so we've been talking about the fund. We've been announcing that it's available. And in just the first day, we received over 160 applications representing over 600 employees.
Wow.
Across Arizona. So that continued on. We, after a few weeks, we received over 3,000 applications. Like I said, we've been able to fund 650 of them, so that's why we're continuing to raise funds. and it's just kind of continued on that way.
Is there still funds available then, or?
There are some funds available
Okay.
that we're continuing to give out to certain communities. Just this past week, we deployed over $100,000 to Sierra Vista small businesses. And as more dollars continue to get raised and come in, we're able to reach out to businesses that have applied and give out more money. So
Nice.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So there's still need if people are watching this and they're so inclined to donate and kind of support that and support their local businesses. You guys still have demand coming in for that.
Yeah, and I'll paint the picture in a couple of ways. One way is on that first day, so the number of businesses that applied represented 600 employees. If I were to tell you in one day, one company that had 600 employees was facing closing within 3 weeks, everyone would be losing their minds, right? And if I told you that was going to happen every single day for 30 days, a new business with 600 employees, everyone would be like, oh my God, this is really bad. That's the reality. That's what's happening. It's just happening among a wide set of businesses. So while we've been able to raise $1.5 million, we've really looked at the numbers and said the need is really about $5 million.
Wow. Okay.
And as we wait to see if Congress federally releases more money, or if more grants become available through counties or cities or any other ways, businesses need support now. They need dollars now. They trying to make rent. They're trying to feed their families. So yeah, there is still a need.
So this kind of goes back to that initial vision from Kimber, right, about founding this, right? This is really about the community and not just the community you have now, but the kind of community we want to live in, right? Post all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I think it's easy to feel detached from these types of businesses if you don't see them all the time, or if you are mostly shopping at chains. But think about your neighbors. Think about your community, the people that make up that community. I give the example. There's a bagel shop that my wife and I go to where we live. And you walk in and there's, plaques of, the 7 or 8 T-ball teams that the bagel shop has sponsored over the years. And I use that as a story to remind people, small businesses have always been the businesses that show up for us. They sponsored the T-ball team. They'll donate a gift card. They'll donate space. They'll, always do something for nonprofits, the community, the neighborhoods, whatever it is. And now is the time that we have to show up for them. And if we don't, then the makeup of our community is going to be very different. There's been projections that possibly up to 30% of small businesses may not make it through the pandemic. So what are we doing now? What can we be doing now to make sure that we can low that blow and make sure that once we come out of this, we come out stronger, but we also help as many businesses as we possibly can survive.
So I think that brings up a great point, and I think it's something that we don't think about all the time, right? Like when we're going about our day and doing our thing, and I know we haven't necessarily been eating out nearly as much as we used to, with a lot of the dine-in stuff not being as available or not available at all. But I have found myself kind of really trying to support as much as I can these places that I guess I don't want to say I took them for granted because I ate there all the time, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I realized, like, man, if this wasn't here, my life would fundamentally not feel exactly the same, right? And I think that maybe all of us kind of fall a little victim to that, right? It's pretty easy as this goes on for us to think about, well, I click a button and a package shows up, or I click a button and then the food's at my house or whatever. But every time we make a decision like that, right, there's somebody on the other side of this that's being impacted, that I think I guess I don't want to say it's we forget about, but I guess it can be, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, we visit these businesses often. It's not that we take them for granted, but a lot of work goes into making sure these businesses can be successful in the spaces that they're in. And it took Phoenix a long time to grow a great food scene. And in order for us to make sure that food scene continues, we've got to support those restaurants, right? And we also have to be faced with the reality and understand that a restaurant can't make a long-term sustainable profit after just selling food to go. So we've got to be safe as possible. We've got to help businesses get through this thing, and so that they can come out the other end and we can have the communities we want.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I know another thing that you and I have talked about several times through the years of knowing each other is that people aren't from here originally. A lot of people are transient, and we move here and we get entrenched in our life, right? We got work and the kids and soccer and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of really cool stuff in Arizona that doesn't exist in Phoenix or Mesa, Gilbert or Scottsdale, or the state's pretty diverse.
Yeah.
So I guess one question is, how has what's gone on impacted kind of the smaller, more rural communities, and two, what are you guys doing to help those if it's something that's that's different than what's happening in Phoenix?
Yeah, support for rural communities has always been very different than our urban cores, Greater Phoenix and Tucson in particular. And the approach is really relationship focused. So each town is a little different, but rural faces a lot of the same challenges. Our northern region of Arizona, actually this doesn't tend to be their slower part of the year. It actually tends to be when things pick up.
Right.
So, doing things safely, dealing with, cultural differences in rural communities and things like that, and making sure that people coming up from Phoenix and different areas of the state are being safe. So we're really just helping to provide as many resources as possible. We've actually, through our fund, the Small Business Relief Fund, been able to fund businesses in all of our counties. Okay. So it's not just been a Phoenix fund. There's actually been dollars dispersed all throughout Arizona. So it's been helpful, or it's been great to be able to help the businesses financially in those capacities too.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So while we're kind of on that topic, you've seen the state, probably every nook and cranny of this thing. So, why don't you give a shout out to a couple of places? We all know Pine Top and Flagstaff and Prescott, right? But
right.
How about some that people maybe wouldn't think about going to that could use a support right now, and also a cool day trip?
Yeah, absolutely. So beyond the more popular rural areas that you're naming, there's a lot of really rich cultural small towns in Arizona that we've actually done profiles on through Local First. We call them our community profiles. And these are towns like Ahold. These are towns like Sonoyta, Eager, Springerville, Pine. You might have to go maybe an hour or two further. So maybe it's about a 3.5 hour trip rather than an hour and a half or 2 hours. But these are the types of towns that less people from Phoenix are actually going to, and so you actually get a way different experience. So maybe rather than going to Flagstaff for those places that you might typically be thinking about going to, there's a lot of southern, really cool, rich cultural towns that have a lot to offer that we really recommend.
Nice.
Yeah.
And some good wine getting grown down there too,
Absolutely.
right? For those of us that some people don't know we make good wine in Arizona, but been down to Sonoyta a couple of times to drink some wine. It's a cool day.
Absolutely.
Nice, right on. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for doing this. And why don't, before we kind of wrap up, just tell people, if you're a small business, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys and kind of tap into those resources if they need them? And if there's someone that looking to support, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, just go to localfirstaz.com. That's our website. And on the main page there, you're going to see a banner for COVID-19. And if you click on that page, you're going to be directed to a few different things. The first will be small business resources. And that'll be our consulting that we can offer and a lot of the education that we're providing. And then if you're an individual or a business that wants to support businesses, you can go to the Small Business Relief Fund from that page. You can see stories about the businesses we've helped and have impacted. And then if you're interested in donating to the fund, you can do on that page as well. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Yeah. I know you got a busy day ahead of you, so we'll let you get out of here, but really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Steve. All right.
Please subscribe. Someone's staring at me now. Hey, thank you so much for joining us for our first episode of Lean Into Local Arizona. We really appreciate all of Thomas's time during this crazy situation and look forward to continuing to bring you guys great content and helpful information about all things great in Arizona. If you like the information you saw today, please subscribe below and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.